Business Foundations for Mums, with me, Kate Butcher, is the podcast to listen to if you are a mum who is ready to launch your business, not sure where to start, or wanting to turn that sideline into something more serious. It will be full of practical tips, mindset advice, and inspirational and honest interviews with mums who are juggling business and motherhood, supporting mums in business to turn your dream into a reality. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Business Foundations for Mums. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about the mental load. The mental load is something that we as mums, particularly as mums in business, quite often have to manage and have to juggle, whether it's something that you've heard of or something that you haven't. I can almost guarantee that you have experienced it. The mental load is, I'm going to get a correct definition here so I get it right. It refers to the cognitive and emotional burden associated with managing various aspects of life, often beyond tangible tasks. So effectively, it's all of the things that we have to think about, remember, plan for, organise, all of those additional things that we as mums have to do, above and beyond the basics of getting the kids to school and making sure that they're fed and clothed and those kind of things. It's all of the extra stuff, the emotional burden of all of the extra stuff. It's the things like remembering that we need to book a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment for the children. It's the things like making sure not only that the children get to that birthday party at the weekend that they're planning to get to, but it's also making sure that somebody's bought a present and that it's wrapped and there's wrapping paper and a card and they're written and everything's done in time. It's all of those little extra tasks on top of whatever it is that we do as part of our day-to-day roles and responsibilities that have been agreed. And often it is those tasks that maybe have never really been agreed by anybody. Every family has their own way of managing things, and every family has their own, I suppose, division of labor. Who's going to look after the children most of the time? Who's going to be the main breadwinner? Who's going to do the majority of the household tasks, whether it's going to be split evenly? But the mental load is all of that other stuff that we have to remember. Remembering birthdays, remembering to make sure that you've got a child who's got a birthday coming up and you've made some plans and you've bought some presents and all of those things that might be needing to be done above and beyond the day-to-day stuff that we have to do. So this isn't to say that men don't face the mental load as well. They absolutely do. But a lot of the time, the mental load falls in particular to women. And it's the logistics of making sure that everybody is where they need to be at the time that they need to be there. It is the mental capacity of remembering all the things that have to be done. It's things like making sure that the dishwasher goes on every single night so that you don't run out of things to use the next day when you're making all the food. It's making sure, one of the things in my brain at the moment, our tumble dryer is broken. So we had somebody out last week to fix it, but we're now waiting for a part to come in so it can be fixed. So at the moment, we don't have a tumble dryer. So I don't even turn my camera around because you will see the laundry that is going on that side of the dining room. Because at the moment, I'm needing to think a couple of days further ahead. I can't just wash something one night and chuck it in the dryer and it's ready for the kids to wear to school again the next day. I have to make sure that I think a couple of days in ahead so that the things that need to be worn in 2 days' time are being washed today so that they've got plenty of time to dry and be ready for when they need to be worn. So it's thinking about all of those little extra things, making sure everyone's where they need to be. And it is mentally and quite emotionally draining and taxing, which is why it's referred to as the mental load. So as I said, it can affect everybody. And this certainly isn't, a case of saying that men have it easy and women do it all, because every family, as I say, is different. And there are certain families where there is a really good division of labor. There are also certain families where there maybe is an imbalance in who does the majority of the tasks. And every family finds its balance and finds its place to work. And at some point, hopefully, find a position where everybody is comfortable and settled in that. But this is a conversation that comes up time and time again for so many of the women, so many of the mums who I know. And it's that assumption that you will do these things. It's that assumption that you will remember the certain things that need to be remembered. It's that just the fact that it falls to you, because if you don't do it, and if you don't think about it, and if you don't remember it, and if you don't book that appointment, nobody else is going to. And that's why it often falls to mum. So it's something just to be really conscious of, to really have a think about. It can have a really big impact on well-being. It can have quite a big impact on your stress levels, on your levels of overwhelm, on your levels of burnout. The more that you've got going on in your brain that you're thinking about, that you're trying to remember all the time, the more impact it is going to be having on those levels of overwhelm and burnout. And it can be a real struggle sometimes to try and manage all of the stuff that we need to manage. But in terms of managing the mental load, it's really, really important that mental load is something that is shared as much as possible. So it's about being able to ask for help when you need it. It's about being able to say, you're taking the child to the birthday party this weekend. Do you think maybe there's a chance you could go and buy the present as well, rather than me having to remember to do that at some point in my already super busy week? It's about communication. It's about sharing the roles and responsibilities. And it's about a willingness on both parts to be able to do that. Something else that can be really, really helpful within that is looking at what are the priorities and managing the other things that need to be done. Looking at time management strategies. One thing I find really, really helpful, and it's something I've mentioned certainly on the podcast before. I know I mentioned it in the time management episode, and I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it since probably a couple of times. One thing I find really, really helpful is to brain dump, because you can get all of that stuff out of your head, all of those little niggly things that you know you need to do. You need to plan a child's birthday party and or birthday presents, and you need to add to your list that you need to book a dentist appointment or whatever it might be that you need to do. You can get that stuff out of your head and onto a piece of paper, and that can really, really help to clear some brain space and make way for everything else that does need to go on in your brain, and really help to reduce the overwhelm massively. It's also really useful to have reminders, to have apps that help you to organize things, to be organized. I have up here on my whiteboard that you may be able to see a list of which children need to be in which uniforms or PE kits on which days of the week. So I can just glance at that in the morning when I'm getting the children ready for school and say, what day are we on today? Tuesday. Millie, you need to wear PE kit. Harry, you need to wear uniform. It's at a glance, and then it's got additional notes. Millie has added her own little notes on there. Tuesdays is mindfulness with Millie that she will be doing. But normally I will write a note on there, on a Tuesday, homework is due in, or whatever it might be. So additional notes can be added. And I find it really helpful to have those visual reminders, those systems in place to remind me of what needs to be done and when it needs to be done as well. Routines, doing things at regular times. For a long time, this is going to sound absolutely bizarre, but for a really long time, for probably a good couple of years, I was working, working for myself, and I would have all my time planned out in my diary and what I was going to be doing when. And it got to a certain point in the week, and I'd think, I haven't planned in any time to do the weekly shop. I haven't booked anything, and I haven't given myself enough time to do an online shop. So when on earth am I going to do the shopping? And suddenly things would need to be juggled around. But now we've come up with a routine. We have a regular time. There's a particular evening, once a week, where my husband is generally home from work earlier. So on that night, we sit down, we have supper, and then I go and do the shopping after that. And I know that's my evening to do the shopping. And it's something that I do as part of a regular routine. So regularity and routine can really help with that. Self-care is also a really important part of that, making sure that you're looking after your own self-care, you're looking after your own mental health. And if you need help, you can ask for help as well, whether that's asking for help with those tasks that you want to do, or whether that is asking for help in a different capacity, or going to the doctor if you're struggling emotionally, or whatever it might be. There's all sorts of things that you can do. Speaking to a friend is something I find really useful as well when I'm feeling really frustrated and overwhelmed, which I have to say from time to time, I do get frustrated and overwhelmed by the amount of things that go on in my brain. And sometimes a brain dump helps, but sometimes I just want to have a really good rant to a friend about it as well. So that can be a really helpful thing to do. Mental load, really, I suppose, just to sort of summarize as well, it really does come about as part of the expectation upon women. And it's part of that shifting expectation. So traditionally, women have always done the vast majority of the childcare and the housekeeping, and the men have been the primary breadwinners who have gone out and been the ones who work. But as time has gone on and life has changed to the point where now the vast majority of families that I know, certainly, both partners need to work, and to run a household with any effectiveness, and to make it financially viable to run a household, both partners will need to work. And if that's the case, that means that quite often that shift from the expectation has not fully changed yet. So there's still an expectation on women to be the primary childcare person, to be the person who does the vast majority of the housework and cooks and does the shopping and all of those tasks and picks the children up from school. You only need to look outside the school gates to see the proportion of mums to dads outside the school gates at school pick-up and drop-off time. And again, that's not to say that there aren't dads who are there, and there certainly are. And there are certainly plenty of dads who are very involved and doing their share. But equally, there's a lot of mums who are doing that as well. And it's really difficult for mums when they work full time as well to try and juggle that, or having to work part time so that they can also fit in all of those things. And it's a lot of responsibility on women, on mums, on their roles, on top of whatever else they have to do, on top of being a mum. And on top of working that they may have to do or running their own business, there is a lot of responsibility for remembering all the stuff that we need to remember. And quite often, I have heard a number of stories where men just don't step up and take their part. And the women just go, do you know what? It's just easier if I do it myself. And that, again, just adds to that mental capacity. And a lot of that comes down to cultural expectation, and a lot of expectation from both men and women that women are going to be the ones who are going to do that. But I think that is changing. I think that is shifting to some extent. But at the same time, we just need to be really conscious of our mental load, of how much we're taking on, how much we're remembering, how much we're doing, how much we're having to do to make sure that everything does get done. So, mental load, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the mental load. I'd love to hear whether you feel that's something that you really struggle with, whether you think that you have the right balance in terms of mental load in your household. And I'd love to hear what you think of it. So hopefully you're going to have a really good day and go and get on with the day and absolutely smash everything that you have to do. And I look forward to speaking to you on our next episode, where we have a fantastic interview with a really inspiring mum in business. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen today. Thank you for joining us here at Business Foundations for Mums. You can find all of our episodes, show notes and blog posts at businessfoundationsformums.co.uk, and you can follow us on Instagram or Facebook.